Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're digging into something that's really shaking up how big software companies work. It's this necessary shift, really, moving software architecture away from, pure theory towards actually prioritizing the developer experience. DevX.
Yeah, for decades, architecture felt kind of abstract, maybe even academic sometimes. But we're learning fast that if the people building the system can't actually use the architecture easily, well, the project just stalls. Or worse.
Right. So our mission today is to sort of unpack that journey for you.
Exactly. We're looking at this transition from architecture as a static monument, something carved in stone, looks nice, but don't touch, to treating it like a dynamic product, something designed for its actual users.
And the sources we looked at really highlight a common failure point there.
Oh, yeah. Dense documentation nobody reads, whiteboard sketches that are perfect in theory,
But completely fall apart when they meet reality.
Precisely. They just don't survive contact with the day-to-day work. You end up with architectures that just gather digital dust.
And if you prioritize that kind of theoretical purity over, well, practical use.
Then you get systems that look beautiful on paper, maybe impress other architects, but they're paralyzing to actually work with. The whole structure becomes a liability, not an asset.
So the core realization driving all this.
It's that the best architectures, the ones that stick, are designed like products. They optimize for real-world outcomes.
So instead of asking, is this the most elegant, theoretically pure solution?
Right. We have to ask, does this help the actual humans using this thing get their work done quickly, confidently?
And when you define architecture as a product,
Mm-hmm.
that question becomes the yardstick for every single decision.
Every single one.
Okay, so if architecture is a product, that immediately brings up the question of customers. Who are the users? It feels like it has to be more than just the core engineering team, right? Who are these often overlooked users? What do they actually need from the system structure?
Yeah, that's really the first big mind shift. Engineers are the obvious ones, of course. They need clarity, maintainability, the confidence to change things without breaking everything.
Standard stuff.
But the list goes way wider, and it touches business outcomes directly. Think about product managers.
Okay.
Their pain point. It's often architectural coordination overhead. If deploying a simple feature update means 3 different teams have to sync up perfectly, that's an architectural failure impacting the PM's ability to iterate.
Wow, okay. I hadn't really framed it that way. So the architecture literally enables or disables the business's speed.
Correctly. Then you've got designers and QA engineers. They need stable, predictable interfaces, clear boundaries between parts of this system.
So they know what they're testing or designing against.
Exactly. And when a seemingly minor UI tweak somehow causes chaos in a totally unrelated backend system, the architecture failed them. It didn't provide predictable impact boundaries.
And you're saying this ripples all the way up,
Mhm.
even if executives never see a line of code.
Absolutely. Business stakeholders feel it instantly. Cost, speed to market, scalability. Can the system grow efficiently? Can it support that new business line reliably? That's an architectural problem hitting the P&L. So every choice, from picking a database to defining a service boundary, it has to be framed through this lens. Who does this decision affect, and how does it actually change their day-to-day?
So if that's the measure, we really need to talk about this clean architecture trap. It sounds like we're moving away from perfection, but isn't that risky? I mean, the source material talks about how you can have this beautiful, perfectly abstracted, layered system.
Textbook perfect.
Yeah. But teams hate maintaining it. Or making even simple changes feels incredibly dangerous.
That tension is absolutely real. I've seen systems like that. Theoretically perfect, followed every rule,
Yeah.
but they were just miserable to work with.
Designed for the architect's ego, maybe.
Sometimes feels that way. Designed to satisfy a methodology, not the developer who needs to ship something by Friday.
Okay, but then the flip side. If we embrace a messier system just because teams like it, because it lets them ship fast, aren't we just setting ourselves up for, spaghetti code and massive tech debt down the line? Where's the balance?
That is the critical distinction, isn't it? It's not about throwing structure out the window. It's about shifting the purpose of that structure. The sources give examples where, maybe the system was a bit messy by textbook standards, fewer layers, maybe more direct coupling than you'd ideally want.
Making the purists nervous.
Right, but if those specific choices let teams ship features faster, handle edge cases more gracefully, and just reduce the overall friction of getting work done, that trade-off is often worth it.
So we're not ditching good practices like separation of concerns or modularity.
No, not at all. Those are still essential tools.
But the structure has to serve the people using it, not the other way around. If the architecture makes the work harder, even if it follows some methodology perfectly, something's wrong.
Exactly right. The goal kind of shifts towards invisibility.
Invisibility. How
Now,
so?
good architectures tend to just get out of the way. They provide clear, easy paths for the normal stuff, the common tasks, and for the unusual things, they offer reasonable, documented alternatives. They allow flexibility without forcing a total rewrite every 6 months.
Okay, that makes sense. So if the measure of success is utility, and we're treating architecture like a product, it needs metrics, performance metrics. We need to get past those subjective arguments about design aesthetics in review meetings. What specific objective things should we track? How do we measure architectural health in relation to actual team productivity?
Yeah, we need metrics tied directly to outcomes. The first big one, deployment lead time.
How long it takes to get code out the door?
Exactly. Once a feature is coded, how long does it take to get it safely deployed and released to users? If your architectural improvements take that from, say, days down to hours, that's objective success.
And that's a metric even the CFO can understand. Speed is money.
Totally. Then you track dependencies. How many different teams have to coordinate for a typical cross-cutting change?
Ah, the coordination tax.
That's often the single biggest drag. Reducing those mandatory coordination points is huge. And maybe the most revealing, although harder to quantify sometimes, how often do changes in one part of the system break seemingly unrelated things elsewhere?
Unintended consequences.
Yeah.
Measures coupling and predictability.
Right. And you also need a feel for confidence. How confident are engineers when they have to change core parts of the system? Are they terrified or do they feel safe?
You could maybe proxy that with regression rates or how often releases cause incidents.
Good point, yes. And since architecture isn't static, it's a living system, it either evolves deliberately or it degrades accidentally.
It needs a roadmap.
Yeah.
Just like a product.
Exactly. You need intentional evolution.
So how do we plan that strategically?
Yeah.
How do we make sure that the work of, say, refactoring or paying down tech debt actually lines up with business goals so it gets prioritized?
Well, a useful tool here is the 3 Horizons model, adapted for architecture. It helps ensure the improvements tie back to tangible value, like faster delivery or lower operating costs.
Your 3 horizons. Break that down.
So Horizon 1 now is about tackling the immediate blockers. The really painful architectural debt that's actively slowing teams down today. These are quick wins, things that provide immediate relief and build momentum.
That builds credibility right away with the teams, with the business. What's next?
Horizon 2, next. These are issues that aren't maybe burning fires right now, but they will hurt later if you ignore them. Think scaling bottlenecks that you know are coming, or structural problems that will just get exponentially more expensive to fix as the system grows.
Proactive maintenance, essentially.
Kinda, yeah.
Right.
And Horizon 3 later is about placing strategic, maybe slightly riskier bets on future needs, building in flexibility for major shifts in scale or scope, or even a pivot in the business direction. It's about future-proofing, but strategically.
And mapping this out makes the architectural work feel like investment, not just overhead or cleanup.
Precisely. It justifies the effort in business terms.
Okay, but this all comes down to adoption.
Yeah.
Right? Which leads to the human factor. You can design the most brilliant system, but if teams just create workarounds because the official way doesn't actually fit how they work,
Yeah.
it's useless. How do we ensure people actually use it?
The adoption strategy really has to mirror how you'd launch an external product. You treat your internal teams like your most demanding customers. Meaning you actively solicit their feedback on early drafts. You ask them, what are your biggest daily pain points? How can this help? You make sure the documentation reflects reality, not just some aspirational state. It has to be grounded.
So are we tracking adoption metrics here too, watching how people behave?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You monitor which teams are picking up the new patterns, where are the old problematic approaches still hanging on, and crucially, what workarounds are people inventing?
The workarounds are data.
They're the loudest form of negative feedback. They tell you exactly where your architectural product failed to solve the user's actual problem. At the end of the day, the highest value proposition of good architecture is minimizing cognitive load.
Taking things off people's plates mentally.
Yes, and eliminating that coordination overhead we talked about. Good architecture organizes teams, reduces stress, and lets people focus their brain power on solving business problems, not fighting technical obstacles.
So if the architecture lets people focus on the real work, it's doing its job. Okay, so wrapping this up, What does this mean for you, the listener? It really sounds like we need to apply the same discipline, the same user-centric focus to our architecture as we would to any successful product we ship to the market.
That's the core takeaway. Absolutely. Architecture only really provides value when it stops being a constraint and starts being an empowerment. And that requires knowing all your users, not just fellow architects. It means tracking real-world outcomes like this productivity metrics and prioritizing adoption and usability over just theoretical perfection.
And when you nail that utility, the architecture kind of fades into the background. It becomes invisible.
Exactly. The best praise an architect can get isn't someone saying, wow, what a beautiful, elegant design. It's hearing teams say, you know what? The system just works the way I expect it to. That's product thinking in architecture.
Perfectly put. So here's the final thought we want to leave you with today. If good architecture tends to be invisible, I challenge you. Look at your current systems. What's the most painful, most noticeable element? That recurring friction point, that meeting you always dread, that dependency that always bites you? What's the loudest piece of evidence that your architecture is still being treated like a static monument rather than a living product designed for you? Something to think about next time you're trying to ship that supposedly trivial feature.